We can do anything with nothing. We can pull music from the air.
Hello and welcome to another Dwarven Tavern Talks. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Goins, along with taverneers Dr. Lissa, soon to be Dr. Ian, plain old Lyric. She'll be a doctor one day.
Yeah.
And we are going to be talking today, if I can do words and things.
That would help.
It would help. It would help tremendously. Words are fundamental, almost as much as reading. But today we're going to be talking about playing your character, and in doing so, we've experienced some pretty touching moments in our exploits in our games. These guys I have dungeon mastered for a long time, and they've had some pretty deep and philosophical moments in their characters' lives, and I have maintained throughout the videos that I have done, be they Hawaiian or not, that role-playing is far more than just a game like this guy. This is a lot of fun, yes, but role-playing games they're downright spiritual. And if they're done correctly, if you don't play them like an MMO, and I've mentioned this a few times too, that role-playing games and MMOs are entirely different animals, entirely valid, but different animals nonetheless. And role-playing games are far deeper. And so, in doing so, what do you guys? What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say touching moment for your characters?
I have so many that all games just come rushing back to me. Since I'm a very emotional person, naturally, sensitivity with my characters has always just kind of happened. Mm-hmm. And one occurrence automatically comes to me when I think of touching moment. It was when we were playing the Super Sisters, and my character was a Valkyrie, but she didn't know it until a certain point in time, and before she knew it, she just knew that she could come back to life. And after she had died a couple times, she realized that she also had the healing ability of the Valkyrie, and there was a Promethean character who was... He was... was it before or after he met his brother?
It was after.
Yeah, and because there were two of them. There was first one, which was Non-Man.
Non-Man.
And then the second one was Unman. Non-Man was a good guy in that he helped us out, and Unman was a bad guy in that he was trying to oppose us. And as time progressed, we realized that Unman wasn't a bad guy, he was just put together wrong, and it was causing him such excruciating pain that he didn't know how else to, handle it except for lashing out. And so,
plus he couldn't die. I mean, yeah. He was totally the flesh golem Frankenstein
so
monster kind of thing.
Me being the sentimental type, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and heal him. And we didn't know how many times I could come back to life, so my dad's like, he is like, potentially it could kill you. Like, kill you. And I'm like, I have no choice. I refuse to let him suffer. Plus, we need to get past this point, so he's the only thing that's holding us back. So, I laid on hands, basically, and I put him back together. And he's lashing out and screaming, and electricity's flying everywhere, and my body is starting to decay while I sit there. Tavern cats. But as he finally went back together, he, all of a sudden relief just washed over him, and I'm, falling apart my skin is, dried and cracked, and I'm turning into dust. And as I'm dying, I say, "Are you okay now?" And he looks to me and goes, "Forgive me." And I just, start busting out crying. It's making me emotional thinking about it.
You're gonna emote.
Yeah, it was a very mystifying moment. I was just like, I knew, I'm dying, I knew. And I came back to life, and it was all good, but I was out of commission for the rest of the night. I could not game anymore. It was such a heart-wrenching moment for me. I was like, what, 15, 16?
Yeah,
I was a youngster.
It got to me too. I mean, it was one of those moments.
It was so heartbreaking. Like, more so than a lot of the other times I have had emotional moments.
So breaking it down, this is the game that we were actually using at the time. We were playing the Silver Age Sentinels game.
Though in a slightly less superhero universe, we were using it as a kind of post-apocalyptic setting with the superhero powers. That's right,
because it was an instance in this particular universe where a meteor had done a flyby so close that it actually incinerated most of South America, and it left this huge radiation stain on the world. I mean, it didn't enter our atmosphere or anything like that. It was just past that close, and part of the side effects from the radiation were the spontaneous appearance of superpowers, and hence the game. But these three and the taverneer Lindsay were playing Four Sisters. And
him too.
He was one of the sisters. He was a cute little thing too. And he was the youngest, actually. He played the youngest.
She was 12 years old.
12
I do remember that. No, I was 12 years old at the time. I remember that because I was in junior high school, and we all had, our characters were a year younger than we ourselves were. Because, or no, a year older. I don't remember. Because Lissa's character was 14, but Lissa was 14. I don't know. I'm so confused right now.
Okay, well, it was around that time.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Your character was like 10.
Yeah, it's kind of a...
Yeah.
It's one of our classic campaigns.
Yeah, very, very much so. But it wasn't just a matter of game mechanics and a lot of the things that happened. I mean, I of course put plot points in the mix, but it wasn't intended as to be as deep as it became, and part of it was their sibling relationship in real life, I'm sure, because this brings me to your touching moment.
Oh. No, he wants to play
and
too.
I'm not actually talking to the cat. The cat had a touching moment when Lissa opened a can of soft cat food earlier. He was like, "Thank you," but
so in that same game.
In that very same game.
In that same game, the cinematic start, how the four of our characters were walking down the sidewalk to go to school. Which, of course, that's inescapable, even in a post-apocalyptic world.
Unfortunately.
So we were walking to school, and we were essentially the start of a mugging. But for whatever reason, one of the thugs in the cinematic shot Larry's character. And she died right through the head, and she was dead. And my character was like... role-playing this with the character having died, and it's like, that's a sister, despite all the chaos coming from a world-shaking event of that nature. The family had stuck together, and then losing a sister, so it was like role-playing this as a little girl, and this is pre-superpowers. What is the reaction to that? And it was like, well, run at them flailing and try to kill them. That was, vengeance.
See, my reaction was, just killed me! Why would you just kill me? I didn't realize, I was only paying attention that my character was dead. I wasn't paying attention that Lindsay and Lissa were just completely like, Lyric's dead! What do we do?
Didn't Lindsay cry?
Yeah. Lindsay, I remember her busting out in tears at the end of that game, and Ian was just like, what?
Ian's like, no one's.
My character was too young to actually understand what just happened.
No, Lindsay, I remember her character scooping my brains back up like Mrs. Kennedy. So, I remember Lissa charging at them, like getting ready to Red Rover, and Lindsay, screaming, trying to put my head back together, and Ian just being like, what's going on?
While at this time, the character Dart, which was his character, she later became known as Dart. Something awakened inside all of them when this event took place. Because these powers had to be triggered. There had to be a trigger there.
Yeah, and my character tripped and went flailing at the bad guys and scooped them out like they were made of butter, I think is how you described it.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was density manipulation, and she became so unbelievably dense that, normal human tissue was nothing. But it was the actual trauma of that character to have lost a sister. And then superpowers, for a lot of the sisters, they just jump back out like, oh, superpowers. And that was kind of put out of their mind because we had, her power was resurrection, that she could actually come back. It's actually one of the powers, and it was actually a fairly rapid regeneration. So
yeah, because after they dispatched the bad guys, which I remember Dart's power was to be able to see all these weak points.
She picked up a rock.
Very
traumatic. I remember this detail.
Said, "That was my sister," and threw the rock at the shooter, and blew his head clean off. Just
I remember
obliterated.
That too.
Yeah. And it was
in-depth details.
Very
ingrained into our heads.
Graphic. Even though it was all up in here, there were no pictures or images or anything. It was just graphic imagery, and it was a really, really interesting thing because I didn't really intend for it to be that traumatic, I guess, or emotional. But
she got shot in the face.
She got shot in the face.
It was a simple cinematic.
It was very much so. And
you don't think about those things.
What happened was while Tavernier Lindsay was trying to scoop up her sister's brains and put them back into her head, the body just turned to ash. It just crumbled.
And then they heard behind them, "Guys,
what are you doing? What's going on?
What happened?" They turned around. There I am, butt naked, just standing like, "What's going on?"
And
they're like,
and of course, Lindsay's character, who later became known as Flex, had the ability to Mr. Fantastic. And she was literally falling apart.
Yeah, because she could also duplicate. She could break off like silly putty into little...
She got that later.
She did get that later, but, And your character was... Let's see, where is it? Flux.
Oh, hey,
because she could fluctuate her density.
Yep, she was in a constant state of flux.
Yes. This is her patron game.
So, Ian, what was your most sentimental, emotional, mental-crushing moment in gaming, if you can think of any?
That's actually a really hard question.
It was when your dwarf found that big diamond.
The axe and the axe and the hammer. That
right.
Yeah. Legacy armor.
The bell.
Dude, the bell.
Oh man, that's a really long story.
It really is, but it's worth telling. We have 14 minutes left, so.
Oh man, God, where do we even start from that?
I'll begin with there is a
long ago,
lost in the midst of time, or nearly so. There was a dwarven kingdom in my world. And it was an offshoot of Mount Gildane, and it was an offshoot of dwarves who they were not really religious zealots, but they were very their own clan, and they were led by a king that took them to this plateau and mined it out, and it was called Theldurgamar. And Theldurgamar followed this prophecy that if they had this big iron bell, an enormous iron bell, and the prophecy went that if the bell were to ring, then Theldurgamar would fall. And so what they did was they encased it in the dwarven equivalent of concrete and cement, and they encased it in stone so it would never ring. Well, at one point in time, this demon lord who wanted this magical thing
The capstone of the adventure.
The capstone of the adventure, exactly. He wanted to defeat the dwarves so he could have that item that the dwarves guarded, which was their real reason for being there. And he got it. And when he got it, the dwarves were holding off the demons quite vigorously. And then he got this magic item and used it to smash the rock that encased the bell. The bell tumbled down the mountain, and it rang. And it rang as it tumbled, and the dwarves just stopped fighting and let the demons slaughter them.
Oh, that gets me. That gets me right here.
Flash forward
Yeah.
about 150 years, and that's when Ulf comes in.
Yeah, Ulf Tarkin Ungart, my dwarf. He is part of the Saints, which so is Lindsay, which is not that one, that's Larsa. Anyways, Ulf worked his way up the plateau, slaughtering everything on his way there, because it was taken over by a demon. It's covered in everything. It's like, there's some orcs over there, there's a hill giant, there's a fire giant, which was hilarious. He cut off the knee of the fire giant, and the fire giant fell on his own sword.
And he was reaching up to get the knee.
Yeah, he was reaching up to kill.
Well, he was on a
knee.
horse.
No, he wasn't on the horse when he killed the fire giant.
Oh, he wasn't. Okay.
Yeah,
Bill was just.
He scared the bugbear by going, yeah, and the bugbear jumped off the mountain. Which, that happened. We rolled.
He didn't jump off the mountain. He jumped to the side, which happened to be about this much past the edge of the cliff.
So, yeah.
Aha! Looks down.
A sign. But anyways. Yeah, and he worked through those guys, and then he went into the top of Thildurgamar, which wasn't that guarded by the tree.
Yes.
Out of context. This sounds weird. But there was a monstrous, basically evil incarnate tree that was basically doing this number on Ulf, but he had a horse. And since he was a saint, he had 10 regeneration. So he would run the horse up, shank it with the fire giant's sword, which he was using as a lance, shank it with the sword, and then run back down the hill. And he's like, it can't catch me because it's a tree. And I keep shanking it with this fire damage, and it can't regenerate that. And then the tree leaned up and came forward. He's like, I have a limited amount of time to do this. So, and eventually he whittled away, because it was doing like what?
Whittled it
Whittled
away.
Oh.
When he was done with it, it was a chair.
Yes.
But the thing is, his retelling of this was amazing, because he was like, the shell shock almost when the tree started.
When a tree comes at you, it's like you don't expect a tree to be like, it's like, I'm a tree, I have these branches. Smack. Smack. It's like, I'm a tree.
But you can
and then
handle
he goes,
that.
You can handle a tree
that.
attacking you, which is something that you shouldn't do. It's
But
like,
when it actually...
when the tree had like ripped its roots out of the ground and lurched forward and it came down, it only came like a foot down the hill. But it was horrifying because
It seemed like
there was a limited amount of hill.
size, because you shrank a size.
Yeah, it's like there was a limited amount of time I had to get rid of this tree. And all had,
You can see it, and his armor just falls off. And everything, he just goes home.
but
You were very traumatized.
because it's a freaking tree, a dwarf. We can do giants, nah, giants or whatever. It's like elves, nah. Like,
Mountains, yeah.
tree. That was a tree. Because it was doing, it had so many attacks, it was doing almost 100 damage every time I got within range. I was on a horse, so I could get away, and it wasn't hitting the horse. So the horse would have died, but it was hitting me, and I had about 200 HP at the time. So I could take it, and then I would go down the hill and sit there and let my 10 regeneration slowly fill me back up with HP.
Except that.
Except that the tree was slowly whittling down my ability to escape it, because it was coming down the hill and there was a wall behind me.
You.
So, in there with a dwarf.
a dwarf potato. But yeah, so eventually I killed that, and I only had 4 or 5 rounds before it got to the bottom of the hill, and it was coming down to the wire, and I eventually got it, and it died. Yay. And then I went through the gate it was guarding, and it was a what would you even call that? It was kind of like a throne room, but on the throne and the several smaller thrones, there was this basically skeletons of the Dwarven lords who originally had been the rulers of Thaldur. And around them and up the lengths of the hall were Durgar everywhere. Now, Durgar are the white dwarves. They're basically the evil dwarves.
The grey dwarves.
The grey dwarves, pardon.
Yes. Let's not get them confused.
Yeah, so they're evil dwarves. And Ulf was there. He'd never experienced the Durgar before. And he was a saint, so he's like, they can't do anything to me. I have no reason to fear them. And they were like, that's a dwarven saint. We're going to stay over here and not get anywhere near him. Because he had, again, slaughtered everything on his way there. And then, this, what was it, Gargantuan? Or Colossal? It wasn't Colossal because we wouldn't be able to fit in the room.
It was pretty enormous, regardless.
Yeah, it was enormous. This huge iron golem-looking thing stepped out of the darkness. It was like the wall stepped out of the darkness. And it looked at Ulf, and it hit its chest, and it was made out of the bell that had fallen down the hill. They had melted down the bell and made a golem out of it. Ulf didn't believe in the prophecy, so he didn't just lay down his arms and promptly wrecked it. Because, yeah, he had like
believe in the prophecy.
he had like freaking Thor's hammer, a thunder hammer versus an iron. It was a flesh golem, I would have been screwed, but it was an iron golem and thunder hammer versus something that's larger than me. It worked out quite well. So he destroyed it, but when it hit its chest and rang the bell, I was sitting there going, I know what that is. And I almost died a little bit. Actually, I did die a little bit. I didn't almost completely die, though.
But
You have regeneration.
I do have
he
regeneration.
You could die
died and then came back, and then
Yes.
he got better.
appropriate dramatic dying.
I'm getting better. But the thing is, even if you had believed in the prophecy, the prophecy had been fulfilled. So that bell no longer had any power over you or any other dwarf because
Except that they had the gall.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
they
was
had
just
the
a pure dwarven sacrilege right
Yeah.
there, right up in there. That was
making
just
the
a box
sacred
of
bell,
sacrilege.
the sacred bell they had on the mountain that was their prized possession. They melted it down, made a golem out of it, and made its only purpose to kill dwarves.
That's like
That you don't that.
Well spake. I think that was that was it.
And
in that universe. That was like taking the holy spear of parting the seas and using it as a toothpick.
It's like taking
After you've eaten like orc meal.
Yeah.
Imagine somebody.
Purina orc chow.
Yes.
Imagine taking like the Arkenstone from Tolkien, melting it down and making a nutcracker.
Or turning it into a shot glass and drinking, elf blood with it. Or actually,
dwarf blood.
Well, elf blood wouldn't be that big. Been drinking.
It wouldn't be that big a deal.
It
It's okay.
Orc
You gotta
blood.
forget about it.
that insults everybody.
Yeah, drinking orc blood out of a melted down
out of
Arkenstone
the-
flask.
Wow.
Yeah, almost.
So,
But
yeah.
after he defeated that, he went up to the throne, and the spirit of the old king
Next.
appeared and was like, "You totally own that. You should have my armor because I'm not using it." And he's like, "Cool." And it was from
very,
the first
very
edition.
touching,
Yeah, it was very touching for a dwarf. It's like, "Hey, bro, you kill all these scrubs," and he's like, "Yeah." That's touching.
Your beard grew an inch.
Yeah, anyways, he.
With the sucking sound.
Yeah. Because that
It's
was,
hard to. I went backwards.
It was sucking out his manliness into beard form. Because you gain manliness and your manly bar goes up and your beard gets bigger.
And on that note, we are going to depart. Leave us some comments and let us know what were your touching moments and the deep how these things affected you, and give us some ideas and we'll talk about them online or whatever. So the whole point of this is to not just play the game like it's just a game, because it's obviously so much more. It's a lot of bonding, and it's very deep and spiritual, and I know that a lot of you know what I'm talking about because you play the game too. So in our next video, and as we progress, we're going to start talking about things like character classes and our favorites. And I know because we've got a paladin, and we've got just a plain old fighter who is far more than that, and then we've got this half-orc monk
that happened.
Who is pretty amazing. So don't forget to subscribe and give us a like, leave comments, share the video too, even if you don't like it. Just like I said at Christmas time, when you get a gift, you don't like it, you give it to somebody else. So even if you don't like our videos, share it with other people so they can see and maybe they'll like it. It's called regifting. So on behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, I am Dr. Jeff Goins, and with me is...
Alyssa Goins.
Ian Goins.
Lyric Guns.
And the other taverneers who aren't here but are here in spirit. And we all wish for you to want for nothing but adventure. And at first I feared it.
Then I charged.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.